Analysis of the Charge of the Light Brigade by Alfred Lord Tennyson for the AQA GCSE Literature Exam. The Charge of the Light Brigade. Half a league, half a league, half a league onward, all in the valley of death rode the 600. Forward the Light Brigade, charge for the guns, he said, into the valley of death rode the 600. Forward the Light Brigade, was there a man dismayed, not though the soldier knew someone had blundered. Theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon in front of them volleyed and thundered. Stormed at with shot and shell, boldly they rode and well. Into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell rode the 600. Flashed all their sabres bare, flashed as they turned in air, sabring the gunners there, charging an army while all the world wondered. Plunged in the battery smoke, right through the line they broke, Cossack and Russian reeled from the sabre stroke, shattered and sundered. Then they rode back, but not the 600. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon behind them volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell, while horse and hero fell. They that had fought so well came through the jaws of death back from the mouth of hell, all that was left of them, left of 600. When can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made, all the world wondered. Honour the charge they made, honour the Light Brigade, noble 600. Okay, so we are analysing this poem with FLIRTS, form, language, imagery, rhythm, rhyme, tone and subject, and starting with subject. This poem is an account of a real cavalry charge. Tennyson read it in the newspaper and decided to write a poem about it. It's the charge of a cavalry mounted division during the Battle of Balaclava in the Crimean War, and it was actually a military mistake which is reported in the poem, and the cavalry were supposed to just chase off a retreating force that was already retreating, and then just kind of chase after them and make sure they didn't come back and join the battle. But that order got confused, and they found themselves charging headlong into a kind of a trap of outnumbered by Russian guns, and they were only on horseback with their sabres, with their swords. Now the form, it is a ballad, so it's telling a story, and there is a refrain at the end of each stanza, and this refrain is the 600, and it is varied, so it's not the same all the way through. The poem begins in medias res, just as Belfast Confetti, and I will explain that the meaning of that once again. And the 6 stanzas represent the 600, so each stanza represents 100 of the men. Now, the poetic form of the ballad is identifying that Tennyson is telling a story. As I said, this is a true story that he read in the newspaper. He was the poet laureate at the time, and the poet laureate, it's a duty to write poems of national significance, and he felt that he would write them honouring their charge. Ballads will normally tell a story that is tragic in its ending, and therefore it's a fitting poetic form for this subject matter. As you can see, the first 3 stanzas depict the brigade approaching the valley, while the final 3 describe their retreat. Now the refrain, rode the 600, rode the 600, not the 600, left of 600, noble 600, it keeps on emphasising the number of soldiers that were involved in the cavalry charge, and this just signifies and highlights the large number that lost their lives or risked their lives. Not all of them died, but they risked their lives in the name of their country. Now, beginning the poem in medias res, as you are aware from my video on Belfast Confetti, in medias res means in the middle of something. Well, this immediately creates excitement and exhilaration. Half a league, half a league, half a league onward. There's no gradual build-up. We are plunged into the action, plunged into the excitement, and we kind of get a sense of the adrenaline rush of the cavalry charge. Now the language. We have language that evokes a sense of bravery, and we have a use of anaphora. Anaphora is a rhetorical technique which I will explain in a moment, but this is emphasising the immensity of the charge. So the anaphora is theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die, and the cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, etc., etc. The alliteration is stormed at with shot and shell, which is a bit difficult to read and keep up the pace of the poem. It's there to imitate the violence of the battle. So the bravery, the language of bravery, pervades the poem is just highlighting Tennyson's pride in the soldiers and the fact that this is a poem that is honouring their charge. The Crimean War, the Battle of the Balaclava, it's largely a forgotten war, really. It's not, doesn't resonate in the same way that the First World War and the Second World War does to us here in the 21st century. And indeed, this noble charge of the Light Brigade, as was, would probably have been forgotten as well, were it not for Tennyson's poem. So, as I said, he is trying to capture this feeling of bravery, and he is trying to honour their charge, their bravery in the face of adversity. Now, the anaphora is a repetition of phrases or clauses at the beginning of lines. Okay, it's not just a poetic technique; it can be used in speeches and in other forms of writing. Epiphora is the repetition of phrases at the end of lines. So, by the use of anaphora in theirs and canon and flashed, firstly, theirs. This gets the reader focused on the soldiers as a unit. It's not focusing on individuals. The anaphora of canon, that's in stanza 3 and in stanza 5, indicates how outnumbered they were by superior firepower. Equally, this alliteration, storm that was shot and shell, it just signifies the extreme barrage from of the assault from the Russian cannons, and this is then contrasted with the flashed all the sabres bare, flashed as they turned in air. So they have just got swords against these Russian cannons. Now, the imagery, the central image, of course, is this valley of death, jaws of death, mouth of hell that is repeated. We have a reference to Psalm 23. We have metaphors suggesting a monster, and we have these hellish images, and of course, death being capitalized as well. That's we can say that is personification. Now, Psalm 23, this is an allusion to the Bible. An allusion is a reference. Okay, so Psalm 23 is probably the most famous psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, but I shall not want. And the quote is, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." So this valley of death is a reference to that, and it is the psalm is all about faith and courage in times of uncertainty, and it's a popular psalm to read at funerals because of that. And the reference in the poem, the allusion in the poem, is there highlighting the faith and courage shown by the soldiers, and also that Tennyson, as I mentioned earlier, is writing this poem as a memorial to the Light Brigade. The jaws metaphor shows how the valley is entrapped the Light Brigade, that they are facing almost certain death, and death itself is personified as a beast, as in monstrous terms. Okay, so not being described as a person, but it is given it's animated, so to speak. It's given a lifelike, ironically, a lifelike features of jaws and mouth. Again, mouth of hell reinforces this monstrous image, but it's also an infernal image. Infernal, the inferno is hell. Infernal meaning hellish, and it also indicates the heat and the torment of a vicious and violent battle. Now, rhythm. So far, quite a few of the poems in the contemporary poems, they were free verse, and there's not a great deal to say about the rhythm. There is loads to say about the rhythm, and I hope you heard it in my reading of the poem. It's predominantly written in dactylic diameter, or dimeter, sorry, not diameter, dimeter. I'll explain what that is in the next slide. A dactyl itself, it's a poetic foot which indicates a falling rhythm. And again, I'll explain that in the next slide. There is a uniform meter and a uniform rhyme scheme in the first half of the poem, but in the second half, that structure breaks down. Okay, so a dactylic dimeter. Well, di means two. Okay, so it means that the meter, the rhythm of the poem, is two of something, and it's two dactyls. Now, a dactyl is what we call a poetic foot, which is a unit of measurement when we describe rhythm, when we describe meter. Now, what that means, a dactyl is 3 syllables. So we have 2 lots of 3. So if you look on most of the lines, not all of the lines, and I'll explain why, it's written in 2 lots of 3, meaning 6 syllables. And the dactyl says that the first syllable is stressed, and then there are 2 unstressed. So we have strong, weak, weak. So half a league, half a league, half a league onward. Da 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 da. Okay, so half a league, half a league. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them. We have 1 stressed syllable and 2 unstressed syllables. And this rhythm, da 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 da, is replicating the rhythm of the galloping horses. Now, in your exam, if you can't remember that it's dactylic diameter, not a problem. But remember that the rhythm is there to replicate, is to signify, is to create the image of the galloping horses. Not only that, the meter, the rhythm, drives the poem. It's an energetic poem. It's exciting and exhilarating, and it's you have to keep up this fast pace. Now, a dactyl is a falling rhythm. In other words, it starts stressed and then it is unstressed. Unlike an iamb, which you might know for iambic pentameter when you've been studying Shakespeare. That is a rising meter, okay? So it starts unstressed and then goes stressed. Shall I compare thee to, okay? Shall I compare thee to a sunset? So that it goes up rather than down. But this dactylic is a falling rhythm. And this represents the fall of the soldiers. So all in the valley of death, into the valley of death, however. This does not fit in with this meter. And as you probably notice, half a league, half a league, half a league onward. All in the valley of death. All in the valley of, and death stands out. Okay, death stands out there to emphasize this certain death that the soldiers are facing. And of course, death is going to stand out. It is going to disrupt. It is going to affect their lives. Now, the uniformity of the rhythm and the rhyme as a whole show how, not show ho, show how the Light Brigade are united. Okay, they are a tightly structured unit. They are in a tight formation. However, in the second half, this breaks down. You can see stanzas 4 and 5, and probably heard when I was reading it, kind of running out of breath because of the lines. It kind of extends the lines. This is breaking down because of their retreat, and their order is breaking down. And also it shows how the relentless attack of the enemy guns. Now the tone. Finally, we have this someone had blundered line, and then we have this final stanza. Now, however, the blunder, the mistake, is reduced to 1 line. Whereas the rest of the poem, it focuses on the soldiers, and that final stanza has a proud tone. He honours, and the repetition of the word there, honour the Light Brigade, honour the charge they made, shows how he is proud of the soldiers. So rather than criticise this strategic error of the commanding officers, rather than focus on that, Tennyson focuses on the heroics. He focuses on the soldiers, and he focuses on their bravery. And this poem is, was a source of national pride, and they were a source of national pride. And the poem is their everlasting memorial, and it glorifies, it honours the sacrifice they made.